Hi everyone, this is Selvi. Today's topic is what is scope of a sprint? So, first let's try to understand about sprint. We discussed in our previous episodes, but I'll just try to summarize some of the topics here. Sprint is a time boxed event. When I say time boxed event, it can be for 2 weeks or it can be for 3 weeks. It depends on the length of the sprint. So, for this particular sprint period, we have a target to achieve certain thing. So, in these 10 days, as a team, we want to achieve certain things. So, to achieve certain things, we first commit on a goal. Like, this is what we are going to do. So, when we say a goal is there, goal needs certain work items to be implemented so that we can achieve the goal, right? So, for a sprint, we are setting the target. That is nothing but our sprint goal. And to achieve the sprint goal, we are preparing certain work items. So let's try to understand with a simple example so that it will be very easy. Like, for example, sprint 1 is going to target on implementing login related features, implementation of login related features or login related functionalities. This is the goal, simple goal. So for that, what are the work items that will help us to achieve this goal? User story related to login page, user story related to forgot password, user story related to cancel or maybe reset button if it is available as a separate functionality, and whatever it is available in the login page in the header and footer, those all things we will be preparing. So when we say all these work items, all these user stories, if we implement, ultimately we will be able to reach the goal of implementing the login related functionalities. So now, can we pull all the user stories that will that are related to this login functionality? No, we cannot. Some catch. What are those things? One is, according to priority, we need to pull. We cannot pull each and everything. Let's say in our login page, we have in the footer section a contact link, help link, and maybe support link. 3 links are available. According to priority, these 3 links related functionality is not really important now. Of course, it is important as a product, but for the sprint 1, it is not important. So priority wise, even though we say that login related functionalities as the sprint goal, those work items are not going to come into picture. So based on priority, user stories will be pulled inside the sprint backlog and not everything. Second point, even though priority is high and we are adding it in the sprint backlog, do we have enough bandwidth to work on that? So that is called as capacity of the team. So based on the capacity of the team and with high priority, we will pull the work items. Even though there are many work items of high priority, we cannot pick everything and plan for our sprint because we don't have that much of capacity. This is point number 2. Point number 3 is whether the work items are meeting definition of ready or not. What is definition of ready? That is a checklist which is going to help us to say whether all these work items are completely having the information that so that I can start this work. We talked about already definition of ready in a particular episode. So people who have not listened, I request you all to visit on the episode of definition of ready and refinement plus sprint planning and the sprint goal. So these all things will help you in giving this information. We are actually summarizing all these details here. So now we talked about what are the factors that are helping us to pull the work items. From where we are pulling? We are pulling from the product backlog because that is the master backlog where all the work items are available. So now, based on the priority, based on the capacity, based on the work items that already met definition of ready checklist, those items we are pulling from the product backlog to another backlog which is called a sprint backlog. What is this sprint backlog? This sprint backlog life is only for the life cycle of the sprint, which is, if it is 10 days, length of the sprint is 10 days, then 10 days only the sprint backlog is available. After that, it's gone. So this sprint backlog is going to act as a subset of the product backlog, right? Product backlog is a master which has all the work items. So this sprint backlog, based on these criteria, whatever we have discussed, these items are pulled into the sprint backlog. So we know now a sprint is a time boxed event where we have a goal to achieve. To achieve that goal, we pull work items from product backlog to sprint backlog based on certain criteria like priority, capacity, and definition of ready met. This sprint backlog is called as the scope of the sprint. Okay, why it is called as the scope of the sprint? Reason is, when we say we complete or we implement these work items which are available in the sprint backlog, ultimately we will be able to achieve our sprint goal. What is the sprint goal? Sprint goal is our target of the sprint. So are we able to correlate the things why it is called a scope? So these work items are available for the length of the sprint, that is 10 days means 10 days, it is 15 days means 15 days, whatever 2 weeks or 3 weeks cadence, whatever we follow, based on that these work items should be implemented. All right, so this is the scope of the sprint. In addition to that, one more quick note I want to add here. Even though the work items are available, we also need to have a plan how are we going to execute it, which means in the period of 10 days, these many work items are available. What should go first? What should go second? What should go third? That kind of order and the plan to execute that also should be available as part of our sprint execution. I will give one example for this. We have a very simplest user story, which is just implementing a help page. Okay, help link is available. When clicking on help link, it should open a page which should open a document or which should open a PDF which is already kind of connected with this link. Okay, so for this the testing effort is ultimately not much at all, because just clicking whether it is opening or not, that's all we need to see. We are not going to validate the content of the PDF that's getting open. There is no such testing. Just clicking on the link, whether link is working or not, hyperlink is working or not. This work item we can keep it till the last. Why? Because there is no dependency with the testing. Let's say there is a user story, there is an user story related to login page, which has username, text field, password, text field. There is a image captcha and login button and reset button. This much is available. So while entering username, we should validate the characters that are allowed in this field and the length of characters that is allowed, that we need to test. Similar to that for password, case sensitive or not case sensitive. Third one, whatever the image that is available in the captcha, every time it will be loading a new image, whether after entering it only we are able to log in or not, we need to check. And while clicking on the login button, the respective API call should be made and the validation should happen at the backend, and accordingly login should work. Reset button should simply reset the fields that are available in the page. This much of work is there. Now if I park this particular user story till last day, what is the disadvantage? Disadvantage is tester cannot test it quickly because this has so many use cases to test. So for this kind of user stories, we should plan the execution in a very valid way. What is meant by valid way here? Let's start designing the page with username, password, and we don't have the backend code still available. We need to still create it. That should be okay. But what we can do now, ask the tester to do an intermediate testing, looking for please enter the username, please enter the password, those character check related use cases, length of the characters that can be allowed related use cases, special characters related entry, that use cases, we can check very well, right? So this is going to save the time. If in case I am picking this work item just 2 days before the last day of the sprint, what is the problem here? Already many other user stories tester will be testing. In addition to that, this is going to cover many use cases. So there are chances at the end tester may not have sufficient time to complete the testing. Correct? So what will happen? We may end up in a spillover. How to avoid that? We should plan properly all the sprint backlog items in what order we should execute. When I say what order, we are not going to put anywhere this is order 1, 2, 3. It should be planned in a way, and during the daily stand-up meeting, we should also think about this, what should be picked up first so that it is going to benefit our team members. So this order or this plan of execution also should be part of the scope. So when we say scope is nothing but the work items that are available in the sprint backlog and the clarity of work items, that in which order it should get executed, or the plan of execution. That is called as the scope of the sprint. So to summarize, we talked about what is a sprint. It is a time box given, and what is a sprint goal? That is the target that we are going to achieve in the sprint duration. And what is sprint backlog? The work items that are pulled from the product backlog that are going to help us in achieving our sprint goal. And what is the scope of the sprint? The scope of the sprint is nothing but the work items that are available in the sprint backlog, and in addition to that, the plan that is going to help us in executing these work items with a defined order. We will talk in our next episode what is scope change. There we will be able to completely understand why this order or the plan of execution plays a major role in scope. I think this episode would have been beneficial for many of you in understanding what is the scope of the sprint. Thanks everyone for listening. Happy learning and stay tuned.